Emily Carter dreamed of a new life, but instead found herself trapped in a house full of dark secrets. Behind Mason Blake's perfect smile hid a man whose haunting paintings revealed more than words ever could. When Emily uncovered the truth, fate handed her one narrow chance, and she took it. But just wait until you hear how this chilling story twisted, and why, in the end, justice finally prevailed. Emily Carter had always dreamed of something more, something bigger than the world she was born into. She grew up in a small, forgotten town in Iowa, where the scent of gasoline from her father's repair shop mixed with the dusty air of her mother's tiny grocery store. Life there moved slowly, wrapped in long, gray afternoons, and the quiet certainty that nothing extraordinary ever happened. From the cracked sidewalks to the flickering neon signs, every corner of her world seemed to whisper, "This is all there is." But Emily refused to believe it. Every night she would press her forehead against her bedroom window, staring out at the endless fields, imagining cities with golden lights, grand museums filled with beauty, and a life that felt like it belonged to someone else, someone braver, someone luckier. And then, just when she had nearly convinced herself that dreams were only for other people, fate brought Mason Blake into her life. It happened on a rainy afternoon, the kind that seemed to wash the whole town clean. Emily was working her usual shift at the only cafe on Main Street when he walked in, tall, soaked to the bone, and carrying an energy that seemed almost too big for the room. He wasn't like anyone she'd ever met. Mason Blake, the famous artist whose paintings hung in New York galleries, whose name was whispered with awe among people Emily only read about in magazines. He smiled at her. Not the rehearsed, polite smile she was used to, but something real, something electric. Over a simple cup of coffee, he told her stories of Parisian streets, rooftop dinners in Rome, and exhibitions where people clapped until their hands turned red. For Emily, it was like breathing in color for the first time after a lifetime of gray. Their connection was instant, magnetic, as if some unseen thread had stitched their worlds together. In just 6 months of stolen moments, endless conversations, and breathless laughter, Mason dropped to one knee under a sky so full of stars it looked painted. Emily said yes without a second thought. How could she not? It felt like life had finally decided to choose her. Their wedding was small but magical. Just them, a few of Mason's closest friends, and a handful of whispered promises. There were no grand ballrooms or glittering chandeliers, but there was something better. Hope. Hope that she had finally broken free from the quiet life that had always threatened to trap her. Hope that with Mason by her side, she was stepping into a future bright with adventure, beauty, and love. That day, as she stood barefoot in the grass with a simple white dress swirling around her ankles, Emily believed with every fiber of her being that this was only the beginning of her real life, a life she had once only dared to imagine. At first, everything felt like a dream. After the wedding, Mason surprised Emily with a house. Not just any house, but a sprawling, historic estate nestled at the edge of Savannah, where the trees arched overhead like ancient guardians. The house had towering windows that caught the morning sun, spilling gold across the wide plank floors. Each room felt like it belonged to another era, filled with echoes of stories never told. Emily threw herself into making it a home. She spent her days choosing soft curtains, arranging wildflowers in chipped porcelain vases, and imagining family dinners and long evenings by the fire. In her heart, she believed this was it, the beginning of the forever she had always wanted. But as weeks turned into months, a strange unease began to creep in. Mason, once so full of laughter and stories, grew quieter. He spent hours locked away in his private studio, a room at the very back of the house, behind a heavy oak door that he kept firmly closed. At first, Emily didn't question it. Artists needed their space, their solitude. But soon, the door was always locked. And sometimes, late at night, she would wake to faint sounds. Not the gentle creak of the old house settling, but muffled thuds, whispers that didn't seem to belong to her dreams. Whenever she asked about it, Mason would simply smile and say he was working on something special, something that had to remain secret until it was finished. Still, a knot of worry tightened inside her, little by little, day by day. One evening, while Mason was away meeting with collectors in the city, Emily found herself standing in front of the locked studio door. Her heart pounded so loudly it drowned out the quiet hum of the house around her. Every instinct told her to turn away. But something stronger, a gnawing sense that she needed to know, pushed her forward. The key was still hanging on the hook by the kitchen door, just where Mason had carelessly left it. With trembling fingers, Emily unlocked the door. The air inside was thick, heavy, as if it hadn't been disturbed in years. The walls were lined with paintings, dozens of them. At first glance, they were beautiful, masterful. But as she stepped closer, her breath caught in her throat. These weren't ordinary portraits. The women captured on the canvases looked hauntingly real, their faces frozen in expressions of terror, their hands reaching outward as if desperate to break free from the frame. The brushstrokes were so vivid that Emily could almost hear their silent screams echoing through the room. Her vision blurred as she stumbled backward, slamming the door shut with a sharp bang that rattled the glass panes. She leaned against the wall, struggling to catch her breath, her mind spinning with questions she wasn't ready to answer. For the first time since she had met Mason, Emily felt truly afraid, not just of the house, not just of the strange art, but of the man she had promised her life to. And deep down, in a place she wasn't ready to admit even to herself, she knew. Whatever was happening inside these walls, it was far darker than she had ever dared to imagine. The next morning, Mason noticed something had changed in her. He was different, too, softer, almost overly attentive, as if he could feel the wall that had quietly risen between them. He brought her breakfast in bed, kissed her forehead more often, laughed a little too brightly at small jokes. But for Emily, the spell had already broken. Where once she saw a man full of charm and promise, now she saw only questions, dark, heavy questions she was too afraid to voice. Unable to shake the growing sense of unease, Emily began to ask around. At first, her questions were careful, almost casual, mentions to the neighbors about the history of the house, harmless on the surface. But as the conversations unfolded, the answers chilled her to its backbone. Over the past 5 years, 3 young women had gone missing in the area, all of them last seen somewhere near this very street. Each time, there were whispers, unease, but no answers. And Mason, brilliant, celebrated Mason, had always been beyond suspicion. He was, after all, the town's own claim to fame, a man whose reputation seemed too grand, too untouchable for anyone to question. Emily felt the truth sink into her chest like a stone. The portraits in the studio weren't just art. They weren't just the products of a brilliant mind at work. They were something else entirely. Memories. Or perhaps trophies. The realization twisted her stomach into knots. That night, as darkness swallowed the house, Emily lay stiffly beneath the covers, pretending to sleep. The old house groaned softly with the weight of the night. And then she heard him, Mason, moving down the hallway with a careful, deliberate quiet. His footsteps were not the easy, casual ones she had known. They were slow, measured, too cautious. Her heart pounded so violently against her ribs that she feared it might give her away. Every muscle in her body tensed as she fought the instinct to run, to scream. But she stayed still, her breaths shallow, feigning the peacefulness of sleep. Through half-lidded eyes, she saw the faintest flicker of his shadow by the doorway, watching, waiting. In that fragile, breathless moment, Emily understood something she had tried so hard not to believe. The man she had loved, the man she had married, was not the man she thought he was. And now, she was completely, terrifyingly alone inside a house that no longer felt like home. At the break of dawn, Emily ran. No suitcase, no plan, only fear, raw and instinctive, pushed her forward, step after frantic step, through the misty streets of Savannah. The rising sun cast long, golden shadows across the empty sidewalks, but Emily barely noticed. All she knew was that she had to get away, far away. When she finally stumbled into the nearest police station, her hands were shaking so badly she could hardly hold the pen. Wordlessly, she sat down and wrote her statement, every letter trembling across the page, each word pulling a piece of weight from her chest. The officers moved quickly. Within minutes, they were driving back toward the house with her, flashing lights cutting through the soft morning haze. But when they arrived, Mason was gone. The house stood silent, stripped bare. The grand rooms, once filled with sunlight and color, now felt hollow, abandoned. The walls were empty. Not a single painting remained, no brushes, no canvases, no sign of the life they had shared. Even the faintest traces of Mason's presence had vanished, as if the house itself had exhaled and let him slip away into the air. Only the floors, creaking softly beneath the officers' boots, seemed to remember he had ever been there at all. Rumors spread quickly through the town, whispers in cafes, sideways glances at grocery stores. Everyone had a theory. Some said he fled the country. Others believed he was still somewhere nearby, watching. But no one ever found him. Not a footprint. Not a name on a flight list. Nothing. Emily returned to the only place she had ever truly known, her parents' small home in Iowa, the very life she had once been so desperate to escape. Only now, she carried different dreams. She no longer wished for grand cities or dazzling lights. She no longer craved the sparkle of wealth or the glamour of distant worlds. All she wanted was something she had once taken for granted: safety, simplicity, a life where love meant comfort, not mystery, a home where doors didn't need to be locked between husband and wife. In the end, Emily learned a truth she would carry with her forever. Sometimes the brightest promises hide the deepest shadows, and even the most beautiful dreams can quietly twist into nightmares, the kind you wake from, breathless, thankful just to open your eyes and find yourself free. The end.